Hey, good to see you. We welcome you into Fox 5's On the Hill. I'm Tom Fitzgerald. We're going to do a little something here. Look ahead into 2024, the presidential race, the challenges facing Congress and the economy, as well as the ongoing global wars. How will all of this play out in the new year? For all on this, we want to bring in our political panel. Brian DeAngelis is a Democratic strategist and partner at the Penta Group, and Jack Calvinitos is a GOP strategist and former official in both the Bush and Trump administrations. I want to start off with the issue that I think is probably going to dominate the news in 2024. That's the presidential election. It's likely that Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. It's likely that Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. However, we hear a lot of consternation about that, both from the Republicans and the Democrats. Let's start with the president right now. Joe Biden, is now in a situation where he's in his early 80s. There's been a lot of conversation about his age, but yet there does seem to be this undertow amongst the Democrats that they would have liked to have somebody else that they couldn't. This word he has the other day that if Trump wasn't running, he probably wouldn't. Is that a problem for Democrats?
I don't think it's a problem because I think Biden's the best candidate to take on Trump. And there is a time where we'll need to build out the bench a little bit more, but Biden's had a strong record. He took it to Trump once before. I think if Trump's the nominee, we want Biden on our ticket.
Yeah, when you say build out the bench, though, it's, the fact that there are other Democrats that are out there. Gavin Newsom gave that debate against, Ron DeSantis the other night. There are other people out there that seem to be waiting in the wings. Jack, do you think that this talk about Biden's age and possibly being too old to be president, is that exclusively coming from the Democrats, or have the Republicans been pumping this prime as well?
I mean, maybe they have, but I mean, the polls and just what you hear in town from Democrats saying that they wish he wasn't running in a perfect world and that he's not the person that they would necessarily want to be leading the party going forward, considering his age. I'm not sure we've ever had a situation like this where there's such a lukewarm reaction from the base of one president's party, and you have someone else who is a former president who's under indictment from the administration that is currently in power right now. So, I mean, all bets are off.
Let's talk about that. Your Republican Party right now. Obviously, Donald Trump is far and away leading the Republican field of candidates right now, but he has these looming legal issues hanging over his head. There has been almost a hard shift in Trump, in his rhetoric, to his side. To his own already rabid supporters. How does that get you, the mainstream Republicans, and how does it get you independents, where Trump is now even further to the right than he was the first time he ran?
Well, I mean, you talk about rabid, but something like I saw a poll, Wall Street Journal, 67% of Republicans actually want him to run. So even though here in Washington, and I'm an establishment Republican, most Republicans I know talk about hailing in DeSantis or someone else, but not just rabid, the vast majority of Republicans want him to run, even though there are these indictments and no one knows what's going to happen from those.
The ace in the hole for the Biden White House seems to be the economy right now. There's a very strong jobs report that came out in the second week of December, surprised a lot of folks. A lot of things seem to be going in a positive direction, but at the same time, Brian, you talk to people, where they live, and there still seems to be this undertow that people aren't happy about the economy. So how does the White House frame this moving into 2024? The numbers are good, but people aren't feeling it.
And people often don't feel it right away. There's always a little bit of lag mentally with the actual performance. But Biden deserves a lot of credit. The Federal Reserve deserves a lot of credit. We've brought inflation back down. We've kept unemployment under 4% for nearly 2 years now. We continue to see great job growth. So the Biden campaign, President Biden has to get out there, keep telling that story, stick to that message, because it's going to hit people.
So, Jack, as the Republicans move into the new year, is the message this isn't good enough, or we can do better?
I mean, I think the economy is a vulnerability, will continue to be. I just can't believe that we were on a pretty good path in the midst of COVID in 2020. I mean, it's actually remarkable and how bad things have gotten. So yes, things may be better with inflation, but they're still higher than they were when Joe Biden took office. So, I mean, I don't necessarily have faith that the Republicans are going to message this the right way. And also there's health care, because Republicans always get beaten up on health care. But this administration has taken some actions on prescription drugs and going after innovators that I think that the Republicans have an opportunity to say, look, this is socialism. This isn't supporting the free market. We want more access to more therapies. But we'll see how the Republicans message these economic issues.
I wish them luck on that, because, you know, we're seeing the president do these reforms in healthcare to lower prescription drug prices, to make it more affordable for Americans. And that's kind of the message that wins elections.
We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine right now. Obviously, the war between Israel and Hamas has dominated the headlines throughout the latter half of 2023. This has opened up some differences in both political parties, on the Democratic side over Israel, on the Republican side over Ukraine. Obviously, the president has been trying to get aid packages to both. What is the appetite there on the Hill right now as far as getting U.S. allies the aid that they say they need? Let's start with the Republicans in Ukraine. Yeah. What's the problem with giving aid to Ukraine to fight Russia's invasion?
Well, a lot of mainstream Republicans don't like the fact that this administration has taken aid to our #1 ally in the Middle East and one of our top allies in the world, Israel, and linked it to something that seems like it's an unending war. So the Republicans have been supporting aid to Ukraine, but a blank check and this opportunity to continue to give going into the future with no end date, even someone like Lindsey Graham is saying maybe enough is enough.
But wars don't work like that. You can't just write down a date on a calendar and say this is when the war ends. How does the president plan on getting this through the House right now, which, even though it's a slimmer margin than it was, is still controlled by the Republicans?
I think negotiations are happening, but to Jack's point, what's really happening is Republicans are hijacking these aid bills. They're trying to connect them to border security. They've actually rejected billions that Biden has offered in beefing up our border security, in reforming our immigration system. You can't let these two things end up hurting each other.
On that subject, though, on that vein, Democrats have had their own issues of late when it comes to Israel. There's been a faction in the Democratic Party that has been talking about Palestinian civilian casualties, and some people have said that this has crossed the line into anti-Jewish rhetoric. Is the Democratic Party speaking in one voice right now on Israel, or are there differences that have opened up here that are raising questions about people and the commitment of the Democratic Party to U.S.'s strongest ally in the Middle East?
I think there's still a commitment to Israel across the Democratic Party. You've seen that in Secretary Blinken and President Biden. They've taken real leadership to support Israel. I think at the same time, you know, as we do with all of our allies in conflicts, we do put, you know, a priority on protecting civilians in these areas.
I want to get on to China real quick before we wrap up. President actually, you know, did recently have a meeting with the Chinese president. We have had a lot of recent years where the relationship between the U.S. and China was not good. When you look into your crystal balls for 2024, do you see us getting on a better footing with China right now?
I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily see in 2024 anything really changing. I think that Republican critics would say, why isn't this administration being stronger against our #1 adversary economically and militarily in the world, which is China? So getting along better isn't necessarily what the American people want. And more companies actually are seeing a huge political risk of having more and more business there, which is why Apple is now going to be making more phones in India, for instance.
But did the pressure that was brought on China to begin with open the door for China to have to come to the table at some point, Brian?
It seems like it did work. The meeting a few weeks ago between the two leaders certainly progressed, but I actually agree with Jack. This will be a #1 issue throughout 2024 as we continue to see companies de-risking and China continuing to try to flex its muscle in the world.
All right, Jack Galifianakis and Brian, to be honest, I appreciate both of you coming in, talk to us about what to look for next year in the 2024 news cycle. We got